Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Ahmet Polat. I'm a photographer, filmmaker, and I'm also hosting our second The Coffee Reader this evening, a program where we try to slow down and have a real conversation. Our guest this evening, on my right side, Tarik Yousif, a writer, a thinker, television maker, and at this moment also director of HKU, Art Academy in Utrecht. Behind him, we have Malika Ouacha. She's a cultural anthropologist and specialized in particularly the Amazi culture from North Africa. And on my left side, good evening, Ilvy Njiokiktkien is an independent photographer, multimedia journalist. You're based here, but you used to live in the United States.
For a little bit,
For a little bit. And yeah, well, you worked on a lot of amazing projects.
Thank you.
You publish your work in New York Times, Time, Newsweek, Der Spiegel, Stern. I'm not going to do the entire list.
Okay.
You were also listed as one of the most promising 30 photographers by PDN, and you won or were nominated for the World Press Photos.
Yeah.
You won it?
I won one too.
You won one too. Yeah, the list is so long. And you were also the laureate photographer of the Dutch nation, the first one, if I'm correct. So we will start with you, but you're more than welcome, Tarik, to join in, and Malika as well. So I think we're going to start with some of the work that I know you the first time I met you, cream cakes and paper chains.
Yeah.
How did this project came about?
Well, I think it was in 2013 that I was, how did you say it in English? Laureate
Photographer of the nation.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
That's a nice way to put it. I only knew the Dutch title. And my assignment was to portray family in the Netherlands. And I could basically think of any way to portray family that I wanted. And I started thinking, okay, when do you see your family? I'm lucky, I see my family quite a bit, but I figured a lot of people see family on funerals and birthdays. And I figured funerals might not be that interesting to photograph or not so, nice to look at.
It's not so uplifting.
Uplifting, exactly.
Yeah.
And I figured it would be interesting to maybe photograph birthday celebrations in the Netherlands. And I only had to photograph 12. The assignment was 12 images. So I photographed 12 of 12 different ages. And I think it was when I photographed the 9th that I realized, wow, this is such an amazing way to have a look behind the front doors of so many different Dutch people. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do 100, every age once.
That's amazing.
So that's what I did.
So the funny thing is, I mean, Dutch celebration or the birthday party is very specific in a way, don't you think?
Very, yeah. It's the
so
typical Dutch birthday.
What did you notice? Yeah, what is the typical Dutch birthday?
Yeah, it's first of all, I would say it's changing slowly, but the typical Dutch birthday is you have a living room, and the chairs are set in a circle, and people sit in this circle and they talk and they eat cake from the Hema, which is a Dutch store. When a new person walks into the birthday party, they congratulate everybody in the circle, and they say congratulations with Ahmet's birthday. And I know for foreigners it's really strange, and it's something that foreigners always think it's weird. And the party never ever really turns into a celebration, like a real party where you dance, or it doesn't really become that lively usually, and people just sit, and then around 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when it's getting closer to dinner time, people have to leave. That's basically the structure of the Dutch birthday.
Well, they never had to leave. I mean, I remember, so I have, two sides, Turkish and Dutch. And my Dutch side, they will always come. And we had, like, in the morning, we had my grandmother and some older aunts. And then later on, my uncles would come. And they would start with, having a beer. And it would end with, who drank the most beers or whatever. But they were always sitting separate. So you had the men in the couch and you had the women on the table. So there was this kind of natural separation of men and women and they were Dutch, right? And my dad really never did birthdays. Turkish birthday, maybe nowadays it's something that's more common, but those days it wasn't that common at all.
No.
How was that for you? How were your birthdays?
Oof, well, we always celebrated birthdays back home. My dad is half Chinese. I'm a quarter Chinese, but we don't really, we don't really feel Chinese, or our roots are quite Dutch. And we always celebrated birthdays, and it was usually a circle. And I think it's still that way. I must say I haven't celebrated my birthday for quite a while. I don't like it that much to be in the center of attention on a birthday, so I like to kind of stay quiet, which has been good in the last year with COVID, because nobody was really doing any big celebrations. So for this year it was fine. But what I noticed in the book is that the culture is starting to change, and Dutch people, what I tried to do is to photograph people from different cultures. So I looked at the statistics of the Bureau of Statistics to see how many, when you have 100 birthdays, how many Turkish people out of 100, how many people are Turkish, how many are Moroccan, how many. So I tried to integrate that into the book, because it turned into a book in the end. And it was nice to see the cultural differences within one country, to see how it changed.
So I don't know if this is the right question to ask right now, but do you kind of like take a very light subject and incorporate a lot of meaning and a lot of more information underneath the light subject? Is that something that you start to do, or are you consciously working on that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it started with this project, because I remember getting the assignment to photograph something related to family, and it's not something I would have usually picked as a subject, because my main subjects are usually contemporary issues. So it's about women's rights or racism or the bigger subjects. So this was truly out of my comfort zone, 100%. But it was also the moment where I realized that daily life, if you photograph enough daily life, if you put it all on a pile, all the images that you take of daily life, you get a really good sense of a current situation in a country. So even by photographing 100 birthdays and looking at the Bureau of Statistics, how many rich, how many poor, how many people of color, how many different cultures, religions, you get really a good insight into a country. And I think, how will I put this? I think by doing that, and by doing it consistently, you can somehow get a feeling of what a country is like. And I sometimes don't feel as much as a photographer, but more as a person, what do you call it, a person working in an archive, like an archivist or something? Yeah. Because what I try to do with this book is to also show the living rooms. How were we living in this time?
You see
the television.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's quite wide shots. And I did that on purpose, because I want to be able to look into that book in 50 years from now and be like, oh my goodness, remember we all had this same carpet from IKEA, and we all had this huge television. And so that's what I try to have, like a moment, in a time capsule, basically. Yeah.
It's very interesting, because I do think that I believe the same thing when I saw this work, and there's a lot of information. You see everybody's, homes and how they live, the wallpaper or the pictures that they have or don't have anything on the wall, or, the couches that they have. So there's a lot of information in there. And later on we will talk about something that you're working on right now, but I do think, and, this maybe have this kind of, insight in families. It comes back and returns again in your work.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that in a little bit. But you've, as a photographer, you said you were doing a lot of social topics. And I believe right now you're doing a lot of international projects. Right now you can't travel that much.
No, my life really changed.
So currently it really changed, but before the whole lockdown, and you finished one of your long-term projects, and it's called Born Free. Yeah. And you've been working in South Africa for how many years?
12 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a short period of time.
Yeah.
And in those 12 years, and you did a lot of different projects within South Africa. But why did you start going there?
Well, it was a total coincidence. When I was 16, I went to the United States for 1 year, and a few years later I was studying journalism in the Netherlands, and college I went to had an exchange. And you could pick between two countries, United States or South Africa. And I was like, oh, United States I've been. And then I ended up in South Africa, and I was 20 years old, and I didn't know anything about the country, like literally zero. And I remember arriving there on this exchange with my university. I was going to do a 6-month program at a South African university. And I remember arriving and thinking, oh, wow, the gap between rich and poor is huge, between the differences between how life looks for someone of color or a white person is totally different. And I was in shock. And I was so young that I couldn't really place it somehow. And that's when the interest started. And a couple of years after studying in South Africa, I got the chance to do an internship at one of the main newspapers of the country in Johannesburg. And I decided to just do it. I just went there. And
that's awesome. You moved there?
I moved there, yeah, right. For a year. And I worked there as a day-to-day photographer. So I would get assignments to photograph horrible road accidents, but also demonstrations, protests, all kinds of things. And that's when my interest in the country really started, because it was a very specific moment. I think I was 24 years old, and I realized that in comparison with the Netherlands, that the young people in South Africa were super engaged. When there was a protest, the youth was protesting. When there was anything happening on the streets, the youth was always in the front row. So all my pictures had young people in it, and that's where my 12-year ongoing project started about youth in South Africa.
Did you have like, you know, and you travel as a photographer, sometimes you have these moments and you ask yourself, why am I here? Why do I need to be here, and what do I need to do here?
Yeah.
I mean, and as a Dutch person, and also being in, you know, in South Africa, with our history, apartheid, everything that is related to the Dutch culture, how do you, bring that together?
Yeah, that was a super interesting question, because I remember the first years of being there at the internship, I had, of course, the Dutch link, and I felt very Dutch, and at times I felt super guilty for being Dutch, or for being white in general. In South Africa, you start feeling very ashamed of your color quickly, or at least I did. I felt really bad for what happened to the country by my fellow countrymen of years ago. So I felt that very early onwards, but funnily enough, or maybe naively enough, I never thought, so who am I to tell this story? Why am I telling this story? I never linked it. I just thought, I'm a photographer, I'm seeing all these things, I want to photograph it. And I think it was only in the last, let's say 4 years, I think it's been a big part of me growing up as a photographer, where I started asking myself the question, so why am I telling this story? And is it important that it's me? And I think I came to the conclusion that it isn't important that it's me necessarily.
It isn't?
No.
Okay.
I think as a Dutch person, maybe you could say it's interesting that it's a Dutch person photographing South African youth. But I think in general, and I don't know if I'm saying something wrong here, but I could have also been in Baghdad and do the same, have the same interest. It wasn't that I was interested in this past because I feel Dutch. So. But I did also in the last, I would say 2 years, 3 years, felt a little bit of shame sometimes, like, wow, I'm so privileged to tell this story because I can travel everywhere. I have access in so many places in South Africa, also because of my color. I did a story, I don't know if you have pictures of it, but of a white racist youth camp.
We don't have the images here, but I do know the website of Seven, the agency. They have those images. And I found that a very interesting perspective that you wanted to kind of like focus on that as well. Yeah,
I really want to show the white racism and the current white racism happening there. And
because there's this huge backlash, right? Reverse. I mean, the white people, the white with Dutch heritage, South Africans, Right now because of the change of presidencies, and they don't have the power that they used to have or control the country anymore, and they don't get the jobs that they used to get. So their privilege is basically taken away from them, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
and the reaction is, in general, that they're not pleased, or they leave, or...
No, I think in general, many people are pleased. I would say the majority would be, but the problem is, and I think it's the same in the Netherlands, that the minority, who are more radical, get more attention, which I have been a part of because I focused my camera specifically on this racist camp. And even though within the article and within the video that I made, you write down it's a fringe organization, it's a very white racist organization, but it's small, those words kind of get lost because that video won at the World Press Photo, so it went viral, and it actually got a lot of backlash because of that as well.
I was going to ask, did you get any backlash? Or
Yes. From liberal white South Africans who said, you are portraying our country like all the white people are racist. And then I would say, no, we're not. We're actually saying that this is a fringe organization. Yeah, but the video is everywhere. So now the whole world thinks all the white people in South Africa are racist. Right. So that's the backlash that we got, mostly from liberal white South Africans.
Interesting, because now I'm going to go back into photography for a little bit, and I see a whole backlash on a tradition of photography, mostly done by men that went to countries all over the world and photographed people of color in very difficult and dire situations. That went on for a long time.
Yeah.
And just now, we're seeing a kind of a backlash. I think Magnum has been, they're getting a lot of negative comments, and also there's a lack of this kind of awareness that the younger generation, hopefully, is learning from this situation and taking their profession in a different way. Do you feel that somehow, because of this project, you've grown into that, or you're already aware of that?
No, I grew into it, and I think, like I said before, I was a bit naive or a bit slow while growing into that. I didn't realize how, South Africans have always been portrayed, or I think Africans in general, sub-Saharan Africa for sure, in a certain way, and mostly by white men flying in from France, from the Netherlands, from Europe, basically. And portraying them and their culture in a way that is not fair. And I think it's really, it's changing now, but very slowly. And I really hope, what I tried to do in the last 3 years, and I really tried, and I think I also managed, but it's difficult to say about yourself.
Well, I will say you did manage.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I see images, and maybe the one maybe we want to have one of them later on we can show, or we have it here, is there's one image that I really like with the boys that are swimming.
Yeah.
Right, and I always felt that there was a certain kind of pride.
Yeah,
and
that's what
a very respectful way of photographing them.
Yeah, what I tried for the first time, and it doesn't feel very journalistic, but I had actually the people I portrayed. So I did a whole story. The 12 years I worked on youth stories of youth in South Africa that were born around apartheid's ending. And I actually showed, before I made the book, before I made the exhibition, I showed it to the Born Frees, because that generation is called the Born Frees. And I made a selection of people who I had looking at the images saying, does this picture portray the youth in your country correctly? Or do you think this is stereotypical? And I would have never done that 5 years ago, because I would have thought, I'm the photographer, this is the way I portrayed it, this is my book. And now I turned it the other way around. I actually had a South African girl making the book with me, and she looked at all the images, her family did, other Born Frees looked at it, because I wanted to make sure not to fall in the trap of making a book full of stereotypes about other people.
And how did they feel that you were making the book?
Well, some images didn't make the book because they basically said, this is too stereotypical. I had a huge discussion about one image of a boy, a black boy, a handicapped boy who was being washed by his mother. And I thought it was a very loving, caring image. And all the people I showed, they said, no, you can't portray someone like this. Even though it was decent to me, they were like, no, it doesn't show us in a respectful way, and it looks down on black people. And we had huge discussions, and then it never made it into the book, because I realized, okay, maybe I'm too naive yet to understand this, but please educate me, and if you really feel that this doesn't work, or this is stereotypical, I will leave it out for now.
Does it?
Yeah.
Well,
go.
at least there seems to be a sort of line crossing, which you can also define as self-censor. I mean, I do understand coming from a certain background or history of photography in Africa, but this sounds like gapping the other way around.
Yeah,
Photography in itself is a sort of truth moment analysis. I have seen your work, or at least the Born Free exhibition and book. Loved it, by the way. But hearing you talking about this discussion about, okay, does this, it feels like self-censor by you as a photographer, or am I?
No, the way to me, in a way, sometimes it felt like that to me as well, where I really had to feel the balance between, is this censoring or is someone teaching me something? Yeah. And to me, it felt more like I was learning along the way while doing. The first question I would ask new Born Frees, I would ask them, in what way have you been portrayed, or your group, in the past years by media? And what way do you feel that is the right way or not? And how do you feel you would want to be portrayed? And then they would give me answers, and I would basically look at, how do I feel? Because I also don't, a lot of people who want to be portrayed in a certain way, of course, want themselves to be portrayed in a positive way. And I didn't want to always make a positive story, because there's poverty, there's lots of violence, there's gang violence. And I've showed all these things because I truly believe South Africa is a country which unfortunately has a lot of crime, and a very high crime rate, and high murder rate, and high, unemployment rate. So it's the things that I also showed, but I didn't want to have the stereotypes, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting that balance right, and I felt I couldn't do it by myself, and I wanted, the people who it was about to kind of teach me, basically.
Yeah, no, I think, and you did, I mean, for me, and I understand.
Not sure if it answers the
No,
question.
I do, I think, because the conversation would be, if it's censorship, she wouldn't make the book, right? I mean, she wouldn't show anything. But I think a lot of times what we see now is the cancel culture, where a lot of things, are being, even going further, being taken away out of the discourse. And so there, and it's... So,
That's a tricky line. So
it's a tricky line.
Question,
I mean, it's a fair question. It's a fair question. And I've dealt with this question as well when I was working on several topics. And like, how do you create nuance? How do you position yourself as a visual artist, which in a way you have this medium that can go all over the world, and you don't control how people perceive all your work or how it's going to be contextualized. So I think the responsibility that you're at least trying to take, or taking, you are taking responsibility.
Yeah, but you never know if it's the right, if it turns out right.
No, I don't understand having that sort of conversation with yourself, of being aware of your role as a photographer, visual media artist, but having that discussion with an external party or with your subject seems or feels like a very tricky road to be on as a photographer. It
is, but yeah.
No, but the thing is, and well, maybe we can talk about this later on. I mean, when you look at how people are educated, and we'll discuss this maybe also when you are indoctrinated with a Western Eurocentric perspective on what is quality and what is our history of art, not telling the whole history or the references of the history, but only showing a small part. That means we're already, conditioned in a certain way. And I think what's interesting right now is that people individually are trying to find this more different perspectives adding on to their own perspective. So, and it's a challenge, because you're right. I mean, who do you pick? That's very subjective.
Yeah, and also I think the challenge and the downside of trying to be nuanced is that if you don't watch out, you're going to be so nuanced that it's going to be boring. That was my, really, that no one wants to look at your book because they're like, oh yeah, this doesn't say anything, this doesn't say the next page, and then you're going to have all kinds of pictures that that
Are
it's so
storyless.
much in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's also not what I wanted. So I did really try to always also push for my voice, that I put in the images that I really liked or that I felt told a story. But I definitely didn't want to include images that were stereotypes. That's the main thing that I tried. Who knows? I'm not sure if I managed, but I think I did. But who knows? Maybe we look at my book in 20 years' time and they're like, oh, look at this white, privileged Dutch photographer. Who knows? By that time, a lot could have changed again.
Exactly. But I think a way to circumvent this is also to make things personal.
Yeah.
You know, and in a way that when I look at your work, and not everything, but a lot of the things that you do, especially the new things that you're working on, are very personal.
Super personal.
Yeah. So we talked about families, and I wanted to come back to that moment. Like, you are working again on families, but in a different way. It's called co-housing.
Yeah.
It's your a new, maybe like your future project that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I finished Born Free, after working on it for 12 years, people, of course, asked me, so what's next? And I thought, oh, I never thought about this question because I thought nothing would be next. I was ready to retire after Born Free because I felt so exhausted from working on it for such a long time. And then I just couldn't think of any project. And slowly, while being in the Netherlands, and then COVID started, so I was in the Netherlands a lot more than I thought I would be, the idea of working on a project about co-housing started. And co-housing is basically any kind of housing that doesn't look like the way most people live, so everyone has their own front door. So co-housing could be either taking your parents into your home or buying a home together with a group of friends or living together with all your sisters and brothers and their families, whatever. It could be anything. And I think that idea also started when I traveled all around the world and I saw that Western Europe and America, or Northern America, are two places where people all have their own little house with their own front door, with one family behind each door. And in other parts of the world, it's not like that. And I always find it very cozy and very warm and beautiful that other countries are not as individualistic as the Netherlands or Western Europe. And I started diving into this project about co-housing.
But within Holland.
Within Holland,
Right.
Yeah, kind of restricted due to COVID. The first idea was to actually travel more as well, to compare the Netherlands or Western Europe to other countries. But then I couldn't travel. So now I've been studying different co-housing situations within the Netherlands. And the World Press Photo gave a grant to work on this. And I've been working on it for almost a year now. And while working on it, I realized, yeah, I really want to live this way as well. So I recently went to 2 different farms to check out what it looks like on the inside.
It's becoming really, really personal for you.
Yeah, I really want to go and see if I could buy something similar and move out of the city to a bigger place, which I could never afford by myself. But if I would buy it with 2 friends, I could, or 3 or 5. So we're looking into it, yeah.
And so I used to, live in a small community of squatters, I think for 4 or 5 years. It has pros and it has cons. I think the old way is quite difficult. When I look at my Turkish family and you have multi-generations in one house, I don't know if you have this in your family or you know of this as well in your family. It's not always that easy. So now we call it co-housing.
Yeah.
We used to just call it reality. You
Yeah.
know, it's something.
It's so true.
And so we've adopted a new word, but it's something old, right? It's something that's always been there in a way. We just in the West have been, I don't know, is it fortunate or was it a choice? We've kind of like expedited all our family away from us, and now we see that doesn't. It's not satisfying maybe, or it's not enough?
Yeah, I think the elderly care facilities that started about 50 years ago in the Netherlands were easy because women started working.
Right.
So who was going to take care of grandpa and grandma? No one had time. So, oh, great, elderly home, let's put them there. And now I think people are realizing, oh, maybe it's not sustainable or maybe it's not what we want for our family. And it's slowly changing.
And for yourself personally, looking at your own family. Does it also, is it also part of the choices that you're making right now?
Yeah, I think my dad is getting close to 70 now, but he's very strong, and I think he will be living still happily and okay by himself for quite a while. But if I would move to a bigger place or to one of the farms that I just looked at recently, I would love him to live next door or on the same property.
Did you ask him? Does he want to live?
Well, it's funny. He says, well, as long as you don't have to really take care of me. I don't want you to like feed me every day and take care of me in that way, but I would like to be close to family, he says. So
Yeah.
I think there's pros and cons, and I think if you live that way, and I've seen that because I've now photographed 4 different families, and it can also really be a struggle because you have to be so honest. If you are irritated by whoever you're living with, you have to tell them or keep quiet forever, you know. It's a tricky balance, but after photographing these 4 families, I also realized it gives a lot back, this way of living.
When are we going to see this work?
Hopefully somewhere mid next year, so June 2021, hopefully, something like that.
No, looking forward to that.
Yeah, thanks.
Obviously, stay here, also for the second part.
Yep.
But right now, thanks a lot for
Thank you.
having this talk. Malika, Ouacha.
Desperate, challenging times don't always call for desperate measures. Sometimes they call for prayers, to uplift ourselves and each other, to go against the speed of the average, to slow down the global rhythm a bit, so even the youngest can follow. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry once prayed, not for miracles, not for marriages or more strength for each day, but he prayed for something bigger and much more important. He prayed to master the art of small steps. He said, "Make me an observant and resourceful, the diversity of every day in time, to dwell on the discoveries and experiences that made me excited. Teach me how to properly dispose time in my life. Give me a subtle flair to distinguish primary from the secondary. Help me to be here and now and accept that no moment is more important than this one right here. Protect me from the naive belief that everything in life should be smooth. Remind me that the heart often argues with reason, and that is okay." He continued praying, "Send me the right time, the right ones who have the courage to tell me the truth, but who do it with love. I know that many problems can be solved if we do nothing," he said. "So teach me patience. You know how much we need friendship. So please make me worthy of the nicest, hardest, riskiest, most beautiful, tender gift in life. Keep me from the fear of missing something in life. Give me what I want and what I really need. Dear God, teach me the art of small steps." I've read this poem or prayer, some people call it prayer, some people call it poem, several times. And after every time I thought, did he eventually master the art of small steps, or is he still praying for it? Was he able to surrender and become patient? Could he wait for his coffee to cool down before he would drink it? Can you wait for your coffee to cool down? Or do you take small little sips, just like Antoine prayed to master the ability to take small steps? I believe there is great wisdom in the things he prayed for. Being allowed and able to enjoy the view a bit more than he would probably do if he contributed to today's high-speed society. Just like how I enjoy my coffee a bit more when I take small little sips, compared to when I would drink it while being in a hurry. The latter just serves no good. Which is why I would like to invite all of you here who are listening to join me and my friends in mastering the art of small sips. Wherever you are, however you drink your coffee, strong black, decaf, sweetened with honey or combined with a heated almond milk, take a smaller sip than you would usually do, okay? And slowly embrace that feeling of joy that coffee brings along. Then imagine a group of people doing the exact same thing, which results in a beautiful bundle of joy and light. I'm sure the rest of the world will definitely welcome so very much in times like these. We will become our own community of small little sips. And when you finish your coffee, I hope you don't turn your cup upside down. I think we're going to do that later, because we're going to read the coffee. But I hope you will just hold the coffee cup in your hands like you would when you were going to be ready for a prayer. And then you visualize this joy you felt when you were drinking it into the world outside of you. Whether you believe in the power of reading coffee grounds or not, I hope you visualize a coffee ground that predicts nothing but prosperity for all of us. Peace of mind, inner strength, and a whole lot of positivity to get through these challenging times and become stronger and wiser together, along with a future where we are all still drinking coffee with a little less physical space between us. I hope you will master the art of small sips, so you'll make that coffee last longer and therefore have longer conversations and together make our world a little bit better through every little sip. I hope you will enjoy your coffee. Until next time.
I want to clap, Malika. Thank you for those wise words and enjoying my small sips.
Good.
Normally, after I finish the coffee, and I don't know if everybody's going to do this, have you finished your coffee?
I have, actually.
You can put the cup underneath, and then you
I haven't finished mine, but
and
I'll
turn
take
it
a
around.
huge sip.
Don't
in
worry,
one.
don't worry. You know how
It's
to do it?
tricky. No.
No?
Okay, just like this?
Yeah, and then you flip it towards you.
Okay, done.
On my right side, we have Tarik Yousif. You call yourself a stacker on education. You've been going from different jobs, different perspectives as a writer, working on television. You worked in a publishing house on a publishing magazine called Halal. And you are, the founder of Architectural Institute Creative Urbans.
Co-founder, yes.
The co-founder
Yes.
of, yeah,
Yeah.
very good. Also, this is going to be a big CV. So, but currently, you've been doing a lot of television programs as well. One of them is called Hope of Slope,
Yep.
Hope or Demolition, which comes back to this love for architecture, maybe.
Yep.
And currently, you are also director of the HKU School
Utrecht.
of Arts in Utrecht.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank
to
you.
this evening's coffee reading. I hope you enjoyed your coffee so far.
I
Do you
did.
drink a lot of coffee, or do you drink any coffee like this?
No, I drink a lot of coffee too much, but not this strong or not this concentrated coffee.
But do you have any memories of and maybe I didn't ask you as well, but do you have any memories of coffee being anything particularly in your
Well, in that
surrounding?
sense, I grew up in my parents always had, well, basically two singers on cassette. Kulthum and Abdelhaim Hafiz, both Egyptian. But when you invited me, I remembered a really beautiful song from Abdelhaim Hafiz, which is the title is Qari'atul Fingan, which is about the coffee reading culture in Egypt. But I don't know, I don't have, it's not specific something in our family.
But you have the song,
I have the song.
which is beautiful. I think we're gonna link that to this
brilliant.
podcast as well, because I listened to it and it's beautiful. You also brought some memories with you in the form of photographs. We're going to look at the first one, which is in 1984. This is in the north of Morocco,
in Hoceima, yeah.
in Hoceima. You were 8 years old here.
Yep. Just a backdrop and a small story about the history of migration in the Netherlands. My dad flew my mother, my brother and two sisters over in beginning of 75 to the Netherlands, because the first plan was he was going to work in the Netherlands and then go back to Morocco. Meanwhile, got 3 children. 10 years later, thought, okay, let's get them also here, still with a plan to work a bit and then go back to Morocco. I was born in 76. And somewhere in, I believe, 82, my father decided, okay, we're going to go back, but we haven't saved enough, so I'm going to send my 2 sons ahead to Morocco so they can start their education in Morocco, and we will follow soon. And about a year or a year and a half later, the Amazicht uprising started in El Hoceima, in Rif, and spread out through the whole of Morocco, which became a sort of student protest. And being 8 years old, I have two very vivid memories of my first confrontation with uprising, dictatorship, democracy, and what have you. The first one is being on a roof building with my grandfather and my grandmother and their children and me and my brother, and sitting having, I believe it was tea on the roof, and then this immense loud noise above our heads, and then looking up and seeing an army helicopter going around the roofs, looking if there's any potential danger they could shoot. And then 2 mornings later, leaving with my brother to school, walked out the front door, and then the whole street started shaking, and we thought, what's going on? Turned around, and in the main road, we saw a whole brigade of tanks, army trucks with soldiers in it, moving throughout the city to occupy the positions in Tétouan in this case. So being 8 years old, and I think a lot of this was made up when I got older, but at that moment I still remember being really impressed by this sort of struggle. My uncle was a student who was participating in those student riots in Tétouan, got picked up one night, spent 2 weeks in jail. When he got home, I still remember looking at him, completely bruised and battered, and being aware as an 8-year-old, as much as you can be as an 8-year-old, of what freedom, democracy, social rights means in a dictatorship. So that's why I'm, in the Netherlands, a proud Republican still.
So you just sketched an entire long movie for us in like maybe 2 minutes, because that's a whole story. But to understand this correctly, you already came here, or you already were brought here to Holland?
No, my mother and brother and 2 sisters brought to Holland. I was born a year after my mother arrived.
Here in Holland?
Here in Holland, and then when I turned 6 and my brother was 8, was I 6?
So you learned how to bicycle ride?
Yeah.
On your 6
Yeah.
or 5 here in Holland?
Yeah. And then got sent
after
back.
learning to ride your bicycle,
Yeah.
and where was it in Holland?
Here in Amsterdam. Just,
So after you were learning to ride your bicycle here in Amsterdam, which is already a brave thing to do, another braver thing is that you go back and totally in a culture shock, basically, because this is the surrounding and going back. You know your family, maybe?
Well, from the summer holidays, but one of the other memories, and that's why I'm still really close with my older brother, because we were Moroccans, sent back to Morocco, but we didn't speak a word of Moroccan. So, and then starting Monday in a new school, new class, with, coming from Amsterdam, all your classmates look different than you, but you are the same because you all speak Dutch. Go into Morocco, all your classmates look some sort like you, have similar names, but you don't understand any word they're saying. And it took about, I think, a month, 2, to start understanding and talking Moroccan and learning.
Talk about adaptability.
I think that was the first fuck up in my life. Yeah.
It was, so yeah, I mean, traumatic.
Well, it cost me a lot of euros to turn the trauma into a sort of upside story.
That's why you became a writer, maybe
exactly,
a storyteller.
Yeah.
We need the art, right, to deal with it all. But no, and that's why I said that's a whole movie you just sketch. And as a child, even for me, going back on holidays and coming back, even in Holland, I would always realize that there's a lot of stuff that's going out there that we really don't know about what's going on here in Holland. You know, Holland has this really kind of this illusion, especially when you're a kid. Well, that's it.
Yeah, it's very well contained reality you have as a child in Amsterdam at that time, beginning of the 80s, and then well, being a part of the not being a part because I didn't participate in demonstrations.
No, but your uncle did.
Yeah.
So how does that story of your uncle have impact on you?
I think that's why I'm calling it the first. I think there something started, which I later on became to call becoming a skepticus, not taking anything for face value, because I would love to make my uncle a heroic person, but he was a student at the university, and basically they wanted better education. So this whole anti-monarchy wasn't really part of their. So there was also something in the demonstrations. It started in the Rif, where the Tamazight people wanted more autonomy for their region, and spread through the whole Morocco. So you had this various different intersections of why people are protesting, And my uncle, and I remember talking about to him years later about it, and he basically also his answer was, well, everybody was doing it. So I also, and I got picked up. And that's why he got released after 2 weeks, because they found out after beating the shit out of him in jail that he wasn't really part of this leadership movement. It was just somebody who followed the group.
Maybe he's making it smaller than it really is. I do think it's brave to stand up for what you believe in. And even though it's different from the main story.
No, that's the wrong something or a conclusion to take. The power of groups in society, and you only need a couple of people who start something, and they can get really a whole country behind them. I think that's.
Well, that's the cynical part, maybe.
No, I don't want to downplay my uncle's character, but it's really, it's brave to participate in the demonstration anyhow, but he wasn't part of the leadership. That doesn't make him a bad or cowardly person, because he did participate. And I remember also my grandfather having really, when he got back, imagine you just got your body abused 2 weeks in the jail, coming home and having your dad yelling at you for 2 weeks more. So it was really interesting scene to be in at that time as an 8-year-old.
So, and how long did you stay there for then? 1 year, you said?
No, we stayed there from when I was 6, turning 7 till my 12th. And then my dad changed the plans again and said, okay, you're coming back to Holland.
Another trauma. How was that?
Well, going from not speaking Moroccan / Arabic, and then after 6 years, 7 years, coming back to Holland, and all the Dutch was gone, so I didn't speak a word of Dutch.
Right.
And then ending up again in a school with people you don't. And my first lesson, I will never forget this, was here in Amsterdam, Montessori College Oost. And the first lesson on Monday was biology in Dutch. Or it was just biology, it was a Dutch school, so it was in Dutch. And I was sitting in the classroom going like, I have no idea what this guy is talking about. So it took me about, and they called it well, I think the Dutch or the English translation would be connection class. Yep. So you got your regular lessons in the morning, and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon you went to 3 hours of Dutch language education every day. So in my memory, after a month or so, I started picking up my Dutch, or started coming back.
Coming back again.
Speaking only Dutch?
Yeah.
When did you switch speaking Tamazight instead of Dutch when you were a kid?
No, I was in Titouan, so it was only Marokkaans.
Yeah, Derija. Interesting. Yeah. And then you came back and you didn't learn any Dutch anymore. You didn't know any Dutch anymore. You only spoke Derija. But when was that switch? When did you stop speaking Dutch in Morocco and switched full time to Derija? When was that?
I wouldn't dare to pinpoint it at any moment. I think it's something that went gradually, within a month or two.
So
really, that quick?
Well, when you're young, you're really adaptable.
Exactly.
It's very interesting.
It's my trauma.
Well, how important was education, or how important did education become for you?
Well, this, one of the persons who will hopefully appear was the drawing teacher in the MCO, Montessori College Oost in Amsterdam, Nico Moon. I'm still in connection with him.
I think we have him here.
Yeah, that's him. I'm in the board of his son, who is a theater maker collective. And Nico was at that time the drawing teacher at MCO, and it was the only class during the whole week, the first week, which language wasn't important. He just basically put papers on the table and said, okay, draw something. And you could express yourself without being dependent on language. And that was, I think, the first confrontation or realization that there is this world of communication outside of language. And those 2 years having him as drawing teacher had a more fundamental impact on my views and way of looking at art than anyone else in my life, I think.
It's interesting. I recognize this.
Oh.
So for me, visual storytelling also happened during drawing, and I was in my own mind always having things that I couldn't express verbally. I would hum during class, and people would find me annoying, and I would draw. and that's the thing that nobody saw. But then later on, it's like, oh, you could really draw. You know, maybe you should do art. And
Yeah.
I never thought about art as being a language, but in a way it is.
Yeah.
And in a way, so art helped you already in a young age.
And also in that specific time, those first 2 years in the Netherlands, they were, well, of course, confusing and struggling, and being back in the city where you were born, but not speaking any word of the language, and being completely lost. And of course, at that time, when I went to Morocco, I was six and a half, so I really didn't have some sort of recollection of friendships, which I would miss. But when you're 12, I had friends in Morocco, I had classmates, I had hobbies there, and what have you. So that felt, coming back to the Netherlands felt more as a trauma than going to Morocco. So the drawing classes were this safe haven of being yourself, of being able to express yourself.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
find yourself in a way.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we see that a lot of the classes, when it comes to drawing or these extracurriculum classes, they're becoming less and less in the past decennia.
Well, it's interesting not to, while we're still in contact, because he is now active as a consultant advisor to various schools, and his team is, let's stop these learning factories and make schools more a cathedral of learning. And he's a very fierce advocate of embedding arts in curricula of the primary schools, secondary schools, etc.
What was the reason why it was all taken out? Because I think, you know, I grew up and having this extracurriculum, or even doing theater or music, you know, when we look at society right now, it's not math that you need to keep your sanity. It's something else you need, right? And you need your social skills, you need something to express yourself, also to express feelings that you may not be able to do it verbally, but maybe through music or through writing or through drawing. So, yeah, I would agree. The funny thing is just that, like, why has it become less?
I think that's, in that sense, perhaps also comparable to your work at this moment. We have, as a society in the Netherlands, and I think Northern Europe in general, has fell into the trap of the liberal political movement of having everything accountable and applicable in economical sense. So, and in that political era of the last 30 years, I think, arts in general isn't applicable in economical sense. So going from there to all these disconnections at schools of stopping any ways of funding creativity in general, because why do you need it? You need to learn math, or you need to learn to code, or you need to learn. The funny thing is, at this moment, my role, there is a maximum of number of students we can allow to study arts in the Netherlands. There is a cap. But there's no cap on lawyers. So basically, as society, we have said we can use every year, we can have 20,000 lawyers, but we don't need more than, and I believe, 8,000 artists a year.
So there's a cap on artists?
Yeah, each art academy has a, there's a.
I also didn't know.
That's why we have the admissions. It's not really about. It's within the.
It's controlling the amount.
Yeah. And that's something which was desired by the government of the Netherlands at the beginning of the 80s.
I want to talk about that because on education, but before that, you went through several different schools before you, and now, you know, you are head of or a director of an art school. In
the HR process is really shitty.
Yeah, but you would not like maybe the typical path or the typical journey that you took to become this person that you are right now. And how is it to you know, take this journey and now are in this position to, you know, deal with education, talk about art and culture in general?
Well, your question is a presumption that it's planned. I often get qualified by my friends and especially by my wife as a person with a very short attention span. So it's not something. My life. Well, basically, when I got back, I couldn't go because when we got back to the Netherlands about 8 months later, we had to do the CITO, which is a sort of test to see which grade you could go to. And of course, I didn't really master the Dutch, and the CITO was in Dutch, so what came out of it was the MAVO. And after that, I thought, okay, so what to do, and then, okay, something economical, okay, so let's do economics, and then after that, okay, let's go to a higher education and do something with business. That sounded interesting, and finishing my business degree, went to work for a consultancy firm, and, well, my short...
Quite traditional in a way.
Yeah, quite traditional path. Meanwhile, was active as a student, which was really funny because I was surrounded by my classmates. We're all, and the classmates, we still see each other, well, not the whole year, but still friends. And they always say, what you're doing now, they were always surprised what the fuck I was doing at the business school.
Right.
Because I was active in politics, I was active in the cultural scene, and they were all, well, looking forward to their life as a manager, director of a business unit or some kind. But it wasn't, it's something, well, life happens, or shit happens, it's whatever you want to call it.
Well, I want to say shit because you also you started working even in making programs.
Yeah.
And I think we have one of the shows that you were working on about Dubai.
Yeah, the most recent one, yeah.
And is that a combination of some of the things you've experienced and took with you and you worked on this? This. What are we looking at here?
This is Dubai. We were. Well, the program was after reading a couple of articles about Arabs buying houses in Limburg, the city. I forgot the city, but in Limburg, and I went like, why are Arabs buying houses? What's there to do in Limburg? Well, and then. The whole group emerged, and NTR wanted to make the program. An excellent producer picked it up, and the research turned that because in the summer it's about 50 degrees in Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Kuwait, so our summers of 25 degrees are really nice for them, and they can afford to buy houses in Limburg, amongst others. And it's green there. It's hilly, it's green, so they love the area. And then we interviewed them there. They also turned out in the research that they're buying properties.
But why are you doing this program?
Oh, why am I doing this program? The easy answer is because I got called. They
didn't call me.
Well, they didn't call you, that's true.
They didn't call her, so why did they call you?
I think somehow in the last, and I've been working now, let's say, professional for the last 15 years, coming back to that, being skeptical about a lot of things, people like to work with me, and perhaps that's why the HKU also hired me, is because I'm always questioning what we're doing, what I'm doing.
What do you mean? What are we doing? What are you questioning?
In any sense, this program is an example. The program is initially focused on why are they buying Arabs in Holland, to the backdrop of the political situation in Holland, the PVV, etc.
So this is interesting. I'm going to go for a shortcut here.
Yeah.
So are you telling me right now that you got asked also because you're also skeptical, and having a Northern African or Arab background, Moroccan background?
Oh, I think that also helped, yeah.
And then, because this is also, we're talking about also representation, like we were, when it comes to photography, but also now a lot of new people that were here for a long time, people with a migration background, are being asked to, take certain positions. Do you feel so it's a combination of you being Moroccan, but also being skeptical?
More specifically in this case, I think about being skeptical about, the first framing of the program, rich Arabs coming to Holland. So that's why we went to Dubai to look at the gelukzoekers, the Dutch immigrants to Dubai, to look at how they're living there. So it's not a one-way street. That was one of the aspects. And the other aspect was really, basic, because I speak Arabic. And really helps a program if the presenter can interview the Kuwaiti and the Emirati in their own language.
Yeah, but it is a different culture.
It is absolutely a different culture, yeah.
Do you recognize, or do you relate to, do you see
something?
No,
or at least to, which was funny to experience, there are no bigger racists against Arabs than the Arabs from the Middle East. I mean, the Moroccans and everybody from the North Africa is basically just, I I think the white South African people look more generous at the black South Africans than Arabs from the Middle East look at the North African Arabs.
I wouldn't know what to do with that statement.
They
but
don't
yeah.
even call us Arabs. We're not
Sorry?
Arabs for them.
Yeah, well, basically North Africa isn't really Arabs. It's the population, you know, the Berbers, the barbarians,
Les
they
Maghrébins, that's why
conquered
they
during the
called-
centuries. So it was really funny being there in Abu Dhabi. Also, this scene, just half an hour before, we got picked up by a police boat on the water because I, as a Dutchman, thought I can take my shirt off because we were not filming, and it's really hot. And I took my shirt off, but I didn't have a undershirt on underneath, so I was, well, not naked.
I can imagine.
And then a
how
boat
it
turned
looks.
up and also almost arrested us. At that moment, it helped that I could speak Arabic. But so it was a really interesting experience to meet these people, which were all lovely people. I did an interview.
Well, I'm asking this because, you know, and a lot of times, and, you know, probably you get this question maybe in another way, but being a representative of your group or being a representation of female photographers or being, it's not an easy question, or, you know, it's maybe not even fair.
Well, well, at least I can imagine you being a representative for female photography, but every time if people say that to me, I don't feel I represent anybody in general.
Do you?
Well, I don't like being referred to as a female photographer because it puts you into a
Well,
box.
I didn't, but I think...
No,
you know,
but it happened a lot.
It happens, right?
Yeah, and I always feel like, yeah, but I'm a photographer. I don't want to be like, so maybe that's.
No, I think
similar
in
to
general on being, well, let's call it nationality. I don't like to be looked at or perceived as the Moroccan Dutchman. I have Moroccan roots, but I was born and raised in. So in that sense, being a representative of the Moroccan generation or generations in the Netherlands is a very oversimplifying a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I don't feel comfortable with being that.
No, but the
In
reality is that you are, and we are breaking through new worlds, you know, breaking these glass roofs. And we were just talking about your position as a director in the HKU. I don't think there's a lot of people with a migration background being in that position. So how,
As a director?
as a director within the art world or in art schools, me working in art school.
No, there are not a lot. I'm thinking about all my colleagues at this moment within the HKU itself, but also with other academies in the Netherlands.
It's quite white.
It's
right?
quite, yeah.
It's quite white. It's a white world.
Yeah.
You know?
You can say
Definitely the art world, definitely the academic art world.
Yeah.
So how is that? How is that working?
Well, it's a lot of fun.
What are the challenges? I mean, what are the challenges for you extra maybe, or don't you feel those challenges as extra?
Oh, there are absolutely no. Well, on one hand, in my colleagues internally and externally, other academies are, in general, also have a background or went through an art academy themselves. I went through business school, so that's a gap. Doesn't have anything to do with ethnicity, but it's just your background as education. Secondly, I've been, for a part of my working life, an entrepreneur. So I'm looking at the Arts Academy structure and system which are in place from an entrepreneurial point of view for our students, which is also challenging for a couple of colleagues and challenging for the arts scene in the Netherlands in general. And then indeed looking at color or ethnicity. I'm not sure if that's in play. On the other hand, I am a darkish, black-haired, brown-eyed man, so I think, but I really...
Maybe you don't want to see it that way.
Well, I'm not sure if I want to see it that way. I'm really hesitant, always have been hesitant to have my ethnicity as a issue within a relationship.
Well, no, I understand
Any
that.
relationship.
Yeah, no, maybe he doesn't feel comfortable, but we can just say that people do look at you and they probably see something different than when they look in the mirror every day themselves. You know.
That's a general statement. Yes.
Yeah. Do you think that diversity has a role to play also with all the things that are happening and the changes that are happening?
I think we have reached the summum of the discussion or debate or struggle for what we call diversity. because going to the 60s, 70s, and 80s even, any person in the Netherlands, let's keep it to the Netherlands, it's complicated enough, from a middle-class position didn't really have to worry about the Turkish, the Moroccans, or the Surinamese, or the Indos, or the Chinese, because they were doing the low labor, which they weren't involved in. And now, and I think that's one of the challenges we have, that there's this generation, multicultural generation, born and raised in the Netherlands, who are competing for middle-class or upper-class positions in general in the Netherlands. So I think the discussion and the struggle for what diversity means and the impact of it on society just started, because for the first time, and let's make it very personal, a director of an art academy doesn't expect or has to expect competition for his or her position from his direct environment, but also from these newcomers in any sense of the words. And that really is a new era of the discussion and debate about diversity.
Which is a good thing.
Yes. Is it a good thing? I think...
That's a long yes. I would say
I would say yes.
I would say just yes. But you're
I'm
skeptical.
I'm wondering why. I really want to know why the yes was so long.
Well, the yes is so long because, well, any struggle isn't really something you're looking forward to. You would like societies to function in a sort of fluid way of, especially a liberal, open society as Dutch or the Netherlands has seen itself for very long. So I'm not sure. So yeah, it's a good thing.
But that's
and it's also confronting to a lot of people like you, like me, like. But I think there's also a sort of multiple. There's a gender struggle going on. There's a diversity struggle going on. There is an age struggle going on. We just talked about male and female photography, etc. So there are a lot of struggles going on at the same time.
I would group them all under the one,
diversity
topic and more inclusivity.
Yeah.
I mean, just to look at, and these are the final things that I would want to go to, which is a little bit deeper. Like what you see, there was a lot of old worlds, and we were talking about Magnum photography, where a lot of male photographers that had a certain perspective on the world. Now, when we look at the art world, which has a huge influence when it comes to people who create the news, who create programs, who create films, who create the things that we're looking at and that we're influenced by. And finally, there's more and more inclusivity within those realms. So we probably have different perspectives. And you also see, and maybe also in the past few years, more conversations, Me Too's happening, more bolwerk, more closed circles that are breaking open. So we finally figure out what was going on before. So isn't kind of inclusivity an answer to a lot of old problems?
No, because inclusivity at this moment, as it has been for the last 20 years, to my recollection, but also a bit of professional interest, has always been about incorporating other thoughts within the existing group. And I think we should move forward to sort of realizing that there's no homogenic group in any way, but accept the differences as long as we have a collective goal to achieve. And that's why I think my career is always very of a low attention span, is I'm really hesitant and allergic to system organizations. It's very easy to be incorporated within a company, an arts academy, a political party, to think, look, and analyze the world as all the other participants at the table.
Yet you're still participating in a system like the HKU.
That's
yourself.
why I'm skeptical about my role within the academy.
But you're still doing it.
I'm still doing
exactly.
it with the illusion and hope of being a part of some change.
So you're skeptical romantic, maybe?
Skeptical romantic. Well, looking at my role at HKU at this moment, I think we have also reached an era where arts, creativity, invention power has never been more needed within society.
Well, that's a good point. I agree.
And I'm hoping, and looking at Arts Academy in general, we focus really on making good photographers, but not on focusing on the positions photographers can take within a team or social topic or as a unity of production, let's put it that way. So we're focusing on really, so what do you want to tell but not how and how you position yourself. So, and thereby, well, we're missing connections to society to really be active as an art scene within societal development. So that's why I'm at the HKU, that's why I'm daily practicing and living my illusion to hopefully create a sort of other sort of art academy or other typology of student from an art academy. The biggest jokes within art academies, of course, well, they study 4 years and then become really good baristas.
Well, it's interesting because you do sound very hopeful for a skeptical person.
Well, okay, well, the hopeful, skeptical person. Yes, that would be a very good definition.
I think that's, we finally found the definition, but I think it's good to end a conversation always in the up, you know.
On a high note.
On a high note. And, you know, and I want to thank you for, you know, trying to answer some of my maybe annoying questions. Because I do feel that, you know, a lot of us are looking at people in positions, even though we, you know, don't want to be positioned like that, a position like ours, that in the academic world, in the art world, in the photography world, to, you know, represent, even though we don't feel that. And we don't feel the gaze of these young people looking at us. They do. No. They do look at us.
That's true. No, that's true.
So to end up this evening, first of all, I want to thank Tarik as a guest, Ilvy, Malika. Also, thank you so much for the wise words again. We have a coffee here. I think we're at the end of our program. What we always try to do, and we did it also live, and I know you don't, you know, you're not used to this in your home culture, but after a good conversation...
I'm very skeptical.
I know you're very skeptical, but after a good conversation, you know, there was always this kind of like, maybe a hopeful note. And my aunt would, even though I didn't drink that much coffee as a kid at all, I didn't like the taste, but I did drink it because I was curious what she would read. So I hope we can see this, the coffee reading, on this camera. I have this wonderful new camera. I hope it's working. Oh, look at that transition. Here's the coffee. Now, I put it upside down so it could cool down. Normally, you put even a ring on it to make it cool down faster, but we had long conversations, so let's see how this has cooled down. Normally, we try and... Oh, look at that.
Oh,
Is that good or bad?
It's good.
Oh, okay.
So,
Tarik, can I try it?
Yeah.
I'm afraid to touch mine now. Okay.
Oh,
fuck, that works.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's
Two good ones. Yeah, now I'm afraid it's going to fall down. Okay.
There you go.
Oh, you did it. So what we did is you lift it up, and that's good luck. So now
Okay.
I'm gonna pop it open this way, my direction, because normally the direction you open it to is also has a meaning. Ooh, that's a nice sound. Look at that. Look at that.
Is that a good one?
Oh yes. I think we have a. Well, you have to make it really special. I think we can see this here. We have a list of for the people at home that love to drink coffee with us. We have a list of little notes that we've made. I think we can see them also on the big screen. And the things that I've learned is always to see if there is some kind of path in your coffee. So if you look at it, I said we're going to leave this conversation on a high note.
Okay.
So turn it open toward yourself.
Oh, towards myself? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I see a lot of birds over there with you.
I see a lot of diversity, Tarik, coming your way.
I think here you see this open path, and it's always good. It's always a beautiful journey ahead. Sometimes with some challenges, sometimes with some joy, depending on the shapes and the forms. Like again, you can see some of the things you recognize. Hearts. I see. I have a beautiful kangaroo down there. I don't know why I have a kangaroo. I don't know if that's on the list.
Is it on the list?
We're going
Okay.
to Australia.
I have a dog, but I don't know if it's on the list.
You have a
But
dog?
it's clearly a dog, yes.
Can we see the list? That instead of
I do have a duck. Do we have a duck?
No, it's not a duck.
I don't have
think
a dog.
it's a dog.
I think next time we have to find if there's a dog.
Oh, man.
Oh,
The
look
duck,
at his
the
list.
duck means money you are expecting is on the way in.
Oh, I wish it was a duck.
Oh, beautiful. And so, you know, reading coffee, and normally I would read your coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe you would read my coffee. We share stories, right? And we share stories with each other that sometimes may have nothing to do with the work that you do, but something that is more underlying that's going on with you. Is that right, Malika?
That's totally right.
Again, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us at home. I hope you enjoyed these conversations as much as I did, and I hope to see you back at the next coffee reading. Good night.